Greetings, incoming first-year students. My name is Dr. Rachel Cox, and I'm a professor in the Biochemistry department. This short presentation will give you a broad overview of the general concepts you'll be learning about metabolism in your first 2 years of medical school. My goal is to give some advice on how to approach medical biochemistry in the hopes that it will seem less overwhelming once you start learning about the material. As a physician, why is it important to understand the biochemistry underlying metabolism? Creating energy and balancing metabolites in response to different physiological conditions requires many biochemical reactions, shown here on the left. During metabolism, many of these bonds are formed and broken. The overall goal is to yield energy from biological fuel, which is chiefly composed of carbon compounds. In contrast, biosynthesis occurs to maintain the structural integrity of an organism, as well as store energy for future use. There are 3 critically regulated processes in the body that control physiological homeostasis: blood pH, blood electrolyte levels, and blood glucose levels. For this presentation, we'll consider the simple molecule glucose, shown here, and its regulation. Since glucose is the main fuel for metabolism, glucose levels are tightly regulated. Blood glucose levels are maintained in a tight range. After a meal, when you wake up in the morning, and even during normal starvation, glucose levels are between 3 to 8 millimolar concentration. But too much and too little leads to dire consequences. Glucose is the fuel that the body uses for energy, and glucose levels are very tightly controlled for this reason. Glucose regulation occurs through metabolism, and metabolism is complicated. But don't worry, you have probably already learned many of the basic pathways, such as the TCA cycle, glycolysis, and oxidative phosphorylation to make ATP. How will medical school expand this knowledge in important ways? By the end of your first 2 years of medical school, you will understand how metabolism is controlled, how metabolic pathways interact, the disorders that alter metabolism and cause disease, and the gene mutations that alter metabolism and cause disease. Perhaps most importantly, you will learn the drugs that target metabolism and are used to treat these diseases. To give you a very broad overview of metabolism, I want to describe the 3 metabolic states that occur. The fed state occurs after a meal from the start of nutrient absorption until absorption is completed. The basal or fasting state occurs after an overnight fast when blood glucose levels return to basal levels. The starved state occurs when there has been greater than 3 days without a meal and your organs have started crisis mode to maintain fuel, particularly for the brain. The primary organs that respond to these states are intestine, brain, liver, muscle, kidney, red blood cells, and adipose tissues. They rely on each other for support and to perform their critical functions. How do these organs generally control these 3 physiological states? The fed state occurs right after eating a meal. Your meal provides molecules and energy that feed your tissues and allow you to store any excess for future use. Food is predominantly made of carbohydrates, fat, and protein. These get digested and absorbed by the gut, eventually becoming glucose, various fats, and amino acids. The first thing that happens is the liver takes up glucose and converts it into energy or storage. The brain is very dependent on glucose, and its support is always prioritized by the body. Glucose also goes to red blood cells for energy, to the muscle for energy and storage, and to adipose or fat tissue for storage. Glucose is also used by other tissues for energy. During the fed state, the fats get stored in adipose tissue. Protein is broken down to amino acids, which can be metabolized for energy and to make other important compounds. The basal or fasting state occurs after an overnight fast. Maybe you've been asked by the doctor to have blood drawn in the morning and to make sure that you haven't eaten anything. While waiting for your blood draw, you are getting pretty hungry. Your body starts to use the stored glucose and to make new glucose to provide energy to your tissues. The liver maintains blood glucose levels by using the glucose it stored during the fed state and by making new glucose. To make new glucose, the liver uses fat provided by adipose tissue and amino acids provided by muscle. The excess amino acids provided by muscle get secreted to the kidney in the urine. Glucose from the liver goes to the brain and to the red blood cells since they cannot make glucose and thus depend on the liver. Products from fat metabolism also provide energy to the liver and muscle. Overall, the tissues, especially the liver, make sure that energy and glucose are provided to the body. The starved state is a prolonged fast. This occurs with famine and food scarcity or with problems such as alcoholism. The body has special tricks to maintain glucose, at least initially, and to make new molecules to support brain function. The metabolic patterns used previously for the basal state will not support the body in the starved state because the body's protein would be quickly depleted, compromising critical functions. Thus, protein is not broken down as much in these biochemical pathways are reduced. Glucose produced by the liver is thus reduced. Any made goes to the red blood cells for energy. However, this means that the brain gets less. But brain function is so important. How does the body's metabolism support it? During prolonged fasting, the fat in the adipose tissue is the major source of fuel for the body, providing energy to the liver and muscle. Importantly, to protect the brain, fuel from adipose gets converted into a new fuel for the brain called ketone bodies, which protects the brain function as well as possible. I showed you some of the important general pathways governing fuel metabolism in the body. You already know that metabolism has hundreds of biochemical reactions necessary to maintain physiological homeostasis. When considering how, when, and where metabolism takes place, it is useful to consider that the biochemical pathways occur in cells and the resulting metabolites are used in the same cell, neighboring cells, or are transported to other organs. When considering all of the pathways and reactions that you will learn, one way to think about it all is to distill the pathways to the very basic principles. In the most basic form, substrates are acted upon by enzymes to create products. During physiological homeostasis, metabolism is controlled by the amount of available substrate, the amount of enzymatic activity, the amount of available product, or a combination of these things. Importantly, drugs usually mimic substrate or product to alter enzyme activity. Here are some of the core metabolic pathways that are used in the various organs that we looked at to maintain normal physiological homeostasis. You've probably already learned a lot of this and even been tested on it on the MCAT. Glycolysis, TCA cycle oxphos, fatty acid synthesis, glycogen and glucose. In the next 2 years, you will learn integrated overviews of metabolism in general and in specific cell types like the brain and red blood cells. And you'll learn further details in many of your systems-based modules. To sum up, proper coordination of the various metabolic pathways is critical for the body to metabolically adapt to changing physiological conditions. Importantly, dysregulation of metabolism leads to deleterious consequences and disease states. I won't pretend metabolism is complicated. During your first 2 years, when learning about metabolism, focus on the disorders that alter metabolism and cause disease, the gene mutations that alter metabolism and cause disease, and the drugs that target metabolism and are used to treat diseases. I hope this brief overview is helpful and sets the stage for your successful medical career. As you work through the systems-based modules, please take advantage of the faculty We are here to help you. See you soon.